we will have a little bit of time at the end for some questions from you, but I wanted to start by asking about something you're perhaps not asked about so often with most of your films, and that is the screenwriting, the script, the writing. A two-part question. I was interested about the source material and how it came about, and I would like to know also, Nathalie's the co-screenwriter of this film. Were you both interested in different aspects of the source material? How did you come to bring it into what we see on the screen now?
Well, Nathalie had been reading the notebooks and diaries of Sophia Tolstoy, and she suggested the idea, and she read about Sophia Tolstoy wrote a lot, and so Nathalie read about 3,000 pages, and then she selected excerpts for me to look at, and we discussed those excerpts, and finally arrived at the script. But Nathalie can better describe the process. Oh. Right. Okay.
And then I'm interested to know about the process of going into a shoot with a script already there that gives you a roadmap into what we're going to see on the screen, perhaps more so than your other work, your documentary work. How was that for you? Was that something very different to go in with an actual script?
Well, it was completely different because in documentary, everything depends on chance and luck and occasionally good judgment. But here, everything was, the locations were picked in advance. The script was written, and so it's the reverse process. And as a result, I think there were about 40 hours of rushes for this film over about 17 days, and for documentary, there are, probably an average of 150 hours shot over anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks.
So you came to the final form in the edit, are you saying, as opposed to the script?
This film, for the documentaries, I find the film in the editing. It's the old cliche about the sculptor finding the statue under the stone. For the documentaries, the structure is the last thing that I arrive at. When I've edited all the sequences that I think might make it into the final film, then I have to figure out how they're linked and what their relationship is to each other. Here, the structure was all worked out in advance. It was a question of, editing the various takes into film that expressed the ideas, or expressed the themes. The only part of it that resembled documentary were the cutaways, particularly the beginning, because that wasn't determined in advance, other than the fact that during the shooting, I tried to collect a lot of shots of Nathalie sitting, walking, contemplating, because I knew I would need them, but I didn't know how I was going to use them.
And what appeals to you about the form of the monologue? Because it's not the first time you've used it.
No, I have no idea why I'm attracted to monologues, but I am. But it's the reverse of a documentary. In a documentary, I'm trying to create a world with, in some cases, hundreds of characters. And in the monologue, I'm trying to create a world through one person. So it's not unrelated, it's just different.
And I wanted to pick up on something you said in passing yesterday that I thought was very interesting, is this idea of abstraction. How to deal with abstraction in cinema. Because...
How do you deal with abstraction?
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow night. No. Well, I'm trying to... well, I try to deal with it in a variety of ways. One is the order in which the sequences are placed. Two is the associations. I hope that people watching the film will have some of the same associations that I do to the material. For example, in this film, it's called A Couple. Well, a couple didn't only exist. The Tolstoys weren't the only couple in the world. And, you know, my limited understanding that couples still exist. So the question is what the film might, for some people in the audience, raise questions about the relationship between the couple in the film and the couples they know, or the couple life that they participate in. But without, I mean, I've just been very explicit. I hope there's nothing in the movie that's that explicit. But it's a question of providing enough hints so that somebody watching a movie will say, well, maybe what's going on in this movie may be related to something in my own experience, or to a more general idea than the literal relationships that exist among the people in the film.
But also at the level of visually, what we are looking at is not 19th century Russia. It's a very bucolic, beautiful French garden. It's texts that were written in Russian and spoken in French. So all those sorts of differences as well also come into this idea of the abstraction. It doesn't have to be real.
Well, what are the at Venice, somebody asked me a question why the film wasn't made in Russian. And I didn't quite know how to answer it, except that I don't speak Russian. Another good question in Venice was, did I think I had a right to make the film based on the writings of a Russian author because of the war in Ukraine?
Nathalie. You have worked on stage and screen and TV with so many great directors, Olivier Assayas, Arnaud Desplechin, Jérôme Bonnel. What was it like working with Frederick Wiseman, who I know you have worked together before with, but what did he bring that was perhaps different or perhaps even refreshing to the direction of you as an actor?
You don't have to give an honest answer.
Est-ce que j'ai bien compris? Qu'est-ce que la relation avec Fred m'apporte? Qu'est-ce que c'est en plus? Qu'est-ce qui est différent? Oui. Alors, ce qui est complètement différent, c'est que nous sommes de grands amis déjà avec Fred. Et ce qu'on travaille, c'est toujours le fruit, le fruit de nos conversations quotidiennes. Et j'ai pas l'impression d'être une actrice avec Fred. J'ai l'impression d'être une personne qu'il a envie de filmer. Et il se trouve que mon métier, c'est aussi jouer, mais voilà, j'ai pas... Je répondrai ça.
Well, the thing that's completely different is that Fred and I are great friends. So what we work on is always the fruit of our daily conversations. I don't have the feeling when I'm working with Fred that I'm an actress. I have the feeling that I'm a person that he wants to film whose job happens to be performing as an actress.
Do we have questions? Please raise your hand. Oh, well, okay. We'll start down the front.
I wasn't free. I'm not sure I can deal with the freedom part of it, but originally I didn't know where to shoot the film, and I thought of a couple of places. Then I thought of the garden that belonged to a friend of mine on the island of Belle-Île, which is off the coast of Brittany, and she agreed to let me shoot the film there. But once I thought of the garden, the garden became a character in the film, because the garden, on the one hand, is very beautiful, was in full bloom in May. On the other hand, the garden has a life of its own, part of which is beautiful plants and flowers, and part of which is what happens at night when all the animals in the garden eat each other. So the garden is a place of beauty and also a place of violence. And that's also, I mean, I sort of given it away, but I mean, it's related to the question about abstraction. I mean, I don't say that, I wasn't explicit about that in the film, in the way that I've just been explicit about it, but I hope that someone watching the film will ask themselves the question, what is the relationship between the garden and the life that Sophia is describing?
Yes, just here, and we do have a microphone. Okay, yeah, you go first and then here. Thank you.
A question for Nathalie. It's two parts. One is, how did you come to be reading Sophia Tolstoy? And second, were there any other feminist writings she would have been aware of then? I think she's too soon for the suffragettes.
Oui, pardon. Pourquoi Sophia? C'est ça la question. On a choisi Sophia avec Fred parce que c'était ça prolongeait nos conversations autour de la création. Quand on est deux artistes dans un couple, comment on fait pour vivre ensemble? Qu'est-ce que c'est l'amour, le partage, la cohabitation, etc. Et je crois que c'est une idée de Fred. Je ne sais plus si c'est l'idée de Fred ou de moi de lire des écrits par rapport à ça et de choisir Sophia. Et l'autre question, je ne sais pas si Sophia était féministe. C'est ça la question?
Non, est-ce qu'elle aurait eu conscience d'autres écrivaines féministes à son Est-ce qu'elle les aurait lues?
Mais est-ce qu'il y en avait? Je crois.
Fred and I chose Sophia because it was an extension of our conversations about artistic creation, the idea of two artists in a couple and how they deal with love and cohabitation and artistic creation. I don't remember if it was Fred's idea or my own to look at Sophia for that. And then in terms of the feminist part of the question, I don't know whether there would have been feminists for her to read.
But that's when she turns toward the camera, she's addressing Leo. Does that answer your question? No.
And maybe some of the other gestures. I thought the scene. Sorry to jump in on your question. I thought the scene with the twigs when she's breaking the twigs, was very, very tumultuous and very striking. As an example, can you talk about your decision? Did that come from Nathalie or yourself to be in the twigs?
When she's addressing.
When she's breaking the branches, yes. the wood and the twigs. It was very quite a dramatic moment.
It is, yeah.
Did that come from Nathalie or yourself?
It came from Nathalie.
Yeah. No, it's come from here.
Ensemble. I'm afraid that's all we have time for, but please do come along tomorrow night at 6 p.m. if you want to ask more questions. And please thank our guests, Frederick Wiseman and Nathalie Boutefeu. Thank you for your questions.